Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Creatives Chat, our 1-year anniversary special. Click the subscribe button to be notified of future episodes and join us as we chat about, who knows what. Our show begins now.
Streaming from Retro Earth Studio and brought to you by
wearehistorically.com, conscious human apparel, and
learn to play jazz piano like a pro, by a pro, with Jazz Piano Pro Essentials at jazzpianopro.com.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Creatives Chat. I'm Rusty.
I'm Peter.
And we don't really have a guest on our show this week, but we do have a special show lined up for you. This is our 1-year anniversary, Peter. Can you believe it?
No, man, it's crazy. A year has really flown by, especially with everything that's going on in the world. So, yeah, a little gift to the audience with a little Creative Chat special.
Yeah, we're going to do some little update, little compare this year, last year, what to expect possibly next year. We'll talk a little bit about the guests we've had on the show, some highlights that we've had. So it's kind of a variety hour. So let's get into it. Peter, what's on our docket?
Well, I think it's really kind of important to start off with, what have you gained this year? What's different now versus when we first started this Creatives Chat journey, Rusty?
Besides my mutton chops?
Yeah, the right team beard, got that extra thickness.
Yeah, well, this time last year, so much uncertainty. Like even when we started this show, we did it sort of out of there's nothing else better to do type of what else, so I kind of felt like we were backed into a corner. And when I say we, I mean I my business plans had to pivot. I couldn't do what I was doing when we went into quarantine. And so creating live stream shows made sense. Who do I create them with? And so, this was in the third of a line of shows I made, and it just happened to fall in place and picking up momentum. We started growing. We got a couple Facebook group pages. We have a Rumble page. We have a YouTube channel. Our website just got revamped. We're creating a huge website library. We've got all our shows are going to be uploaded onto creativeschat.com. It's going to create a much better experience. It's still being a little tweaked, but I mean, we've come a long way in a short amount of time. When I think about it, I mean, this time last year, we wouldn't have even guessed we would have still be doing that this year.
Right? Yeah, no, that's entirely true, because I think it really started off as just kind of a humanitarian service project, so to speak, just really trying to uplift people, highlight different creatives that might be kind of in the rut with everything going on with the Rona. And I think that's something that's really fascinating, just to think of how much has changed, yet how little has changed in the world, and how things are, I'd say, kind of relatively the same. Some stuff's opening up again, but a lot of people, I don't think, have recovered mentally from what we've experienced this past year. So I think one of the things for me is, I just really hope that we allowed people the opportunity to kind of grow and take their life to a deeper level and another mode of existence and consciousness, just through hearing all the different experiences. We've had some cool guests, but really a wide, diverse spectrum of people on this show. And I know I've learned so much just from hearing other people's journeys, that it's just been such a humbling experience. And I think that's something that's always fascinating as a takeaway is, I think it was actually on this show, the whole puzzle piece metaphor was created, where it was, we're each a different piece of the puzzle. And when you really hear other people's perspectives, you exchange pieces, and your whole, I guess you would say, your whole scenery and picture of life in this great mystery gets more complete. So it's been really fascinating just to kind of tap in and have these deep conversations. So yeah, man, thank you for having the idea to create the show. It's been cool.
Well, it wouldn't be the same show without you. I mean, you bring a certain energy to the show, and I would say the whole the real secret sauce to our show is that it's 100% organic. We go into it flying blindly off the seat of our pants. We don't know what to expect. We do very little prep work. I mean, we know who we're going to have a conversation with. You kind of have an idea, but we don't really set the talking points in advance. So it is purely organic in that fashion, where it's refreshing to me to see this kind of show out there that's, isn't structured, like, to a point where there's a formula and we have to follow guidelines. And so to be able to really creatively create this, it really is the embodiment of being just 100% present during the show and who you're talking with. And you bring that dynamic where you're able to make the guests feel relaxed, to get opened up, you're authentically interested in who they are and what they're up to. And so it's a booster. As the producer, and when because usually by this time of the show, I popped out and I'm taking notes and I'm monitoring, and there's a bunch of behind the scenes tech work that has to be taken care of. And so it's nice to be able to just get in the back seat and let you drive the car for a while and go along for a ride, because as I'm kind of a third party observer when I'm in the production booth, and I don't know what's coming out of your mouth next, or the guests. And so I'm always intensely intrigued, just as much like, oh, wow. And it's amazing how much I've grown in this past year, just, being inspired by other creatives in our community. That's the real reason why I wanted to create the show, is that creatives just have a way of figuring out how to have fun in the most unusual circumstances. They can turn a rainy day into a fun day.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's been a really cool and unique experience to hear so many different perspectives and angles to many of life's issues and how they've handled it, and just to hear the coping mechanisms. And the one kind of thread that attaches all the creatives is that they've looked within. I think that's been something really fascinating, is that every one of them has questioned life, questioned themselves, to a point where they've obviously gone into states of being uncomfortable about it, because that's the one thing that really does give people the greatest power in this world, is self-knowledge. So it's been really encouraging, and just right there with you, it's been really inspiring just to hear all these different tales, and to know that there's an infinite amount of possibilities in how you can manifest and express things. So I don't know, like, it's just crazy to kind of like bring it back to then and now. Like, what have I really learned? I mean, I've learned so much about myself, just hearing other people talk about things, of just different areas in which I can be a better version of myself, where I can help, and I just want to say thanks for the kudos out there, because I also don't know what's going to come out of my mouth when we're having these conversations. It's just been something that I found, when you tap into the flow, the universe just kind of provides you the outlet to speak on what needs to be heard in the moment. And I think that's been really refreshing, but also really jaw-dropping, just to listen back to some of the things. Because, when you're in the zone, you're in the flow, you don't even know what you talked about. You're just like, oh, wow, we just time traveled. All right, have fun chopping that up, Rusty. So
let's talk about the process, because whether our viewers are aware of this or not, it's no secret. We pre-record our shows, and so this allows us to actually lose track of time, because what I've learned speaking with creatives is that when we get into the flow, it's because we've lost track of time. It becomes the sense of timelessness. It's hard to lose track of time. It's hard to keep track of time and be in the flow at the same time.
Because I was freaking out about time earlier, but I think we can actually, if you're down, we can go until
dude, whatever. We're just in the flow.
Whatever works, because I love this conversation that we're having.
But when you remove time from the equation, suddenly all that's present is just the flow.
Yeah.
And so when we get our guests on our show and we start talking, you wait about half an hour, 20, 30 minutes, the shift starts to occur. There's this relaxation, there's this vibing, this resonance that, like, oh, sometimes it happens, click straight on because, maybe we're already doing a little bit of talking in the green room before we start recording our show. But most of the time I like to just hit record from the get-go because it's unrehearsed, and and that's where you get the most authentic conversations. But typically what happens is right around the 1 hour mark, where our show would typically be over, is when it really starts to get good. Like, we've lost all track of time. We're in the flow, and it becomes this two-way conversation where it's not just an interview. It becomes, oh yes, and now the conversation grows. It just compounds. Like, you add to it, they add to it, you add to it, they add to it. Instead of going from an A point to B point, it goes from an A point, or like it gets deeper, or it's depth that comes to the conversation rather than, an unexpected depth. Let's just put it that way. And so I think we both learned that we just let it keep recording. And so sometimes when we're having these conversations with our guests, they go 2 or 3 hours long, and which is okay, because it's just all good conversation. And then it's up to me to be able to go, okay, I got to break this down into a first show and typically a second show. And that's where we get our after show convo, because with the after shows is when we really tend to dive deep and ask tougher questions, and being open to the process of being able to, because like you said, you don't know what's coming out of your mouth. Our guests don't know what's coming out of theirs either at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the difference though, because I find, and it's funny that you say that, because I found that a few episodes we were just like, the moment we got in the room, it was just like vibe connections, and the moment we got going, it was just like we hit the ground running in conversation. And because I found that we speak from the heart, and I think the vulnerability aspect has been incredibly powerful. And again, just so it's hard to put it into words, purely because some of the things that we've talked about in the show with different guests has really been them overcoming their darkest shadows, and when you can get on that level of someone, and often the time, first time meeting them and talking with them about these types of things, it's just a different type of conversation. It's not just I know we try to keep it casual, it's not just like an interview, it's just not a show. It's two beings really opening up their hearts to each other. And then when we get you in the mix, we get the three aspect of that triangle going, that power shape. But it's really interesting to me just to see every guest has gotten vulnerable. I think that's probably a rarity I take for granted, because I just haven't been in like the production and the recording, avenue. And, it's my first pod webcasting interview job. But I really feel that that's one of the most special things about the show.
That's a really good observation, because I've actually, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I've done a bunch of shows. And so there's always good with the bad. And, and sometimes, they average out that there's typically more good shows than bad shows, and it just goes with the territories. Not every day you're hitting you're batting 1,000. The show is driven by your energy, but my experience with this show is that we haven't had a bad show. Like, every show has been great. And that really is an anomaly, that there's not been a show that I haven't watched more than once. I've seen every show. I record it, I produce it, I stream it, and I go back and I watch them over and over. Some of these I just keep getting new lessons out of.
Right. Yeah.
It's incredible being on the receiving end of it. That, I get that we're making a contribution to our community. Whether anybody else gets that we're making a contribution, I have benefited from this contribution. It has made me a much more in-tuned and attuned community member. And
Yeah.
so what you're experiencing, like not having a bad, that's highly unusual. You just put it that way. What we have is very special.
And I really can't wait to continue to grow the show and really just show the audience the different avenues of conversation, because our lineup, it's just not creatives in the art form, it's self-masters. It's, I think, some of the biggest stuff that's going to be coming up is those who have mastered themselves, who have really questioned and gone beyond the normal understandings of life. And as we continue to dive deep and evolve and expand, I just want to say thanks to the listeners real quick, for being with us on this journey, because it doesn't matter. I know a lot of you have chimed in just because of your one family connection, your personal friend, the one person you listen to, and the guest of choice, but you've stuck around and joined us on this really cool adventure of, I consider, really exploring the universe from an individual perspective at a time. And I think that's, again, been one of the coolest things to witness, is what you were talking about, just getting those different nuggets every time. Like, and it's a funny meme because I can't remember where it's from, but it's just like when you're talking to someone and you're getting advised by your own advice. But it was like, it's essentially this, like, I'll be listening to it and I'm just like hearing something, and when it just resonates with you in the moment, when you experience something that day, it just processes so much differently. And it's like, wow, I was saying that in just conversation to somebody. Wait, they were saying that to me? Like, oh my gosh, this applies so much right now. Like, there's been those synchronicities and just those, circumstances, or I guess you would say coincidences of life, where it's just like, oh wow, this like applies to this moment right now entirely. But
That's a really good point. Yes, that's a really good point. How we're vibing with the same lessons. We might be on different levels sometimes, but it all applies. That, like you said, typically our guests, there's a certain amount of vulnerability that's required in order to tap into that flow. You have to be 100%. Able to trust the flow, and so as you said, you can't control the flow. You can't, it's no longer the flow.
I don't know where I'd be, but I'm grateful for the experience. But
that's powerful though, yo.
Just being authentically present and able to respond in that moment without giving it any forethought, that's the flow. Right. And so when our guests step into that, they have to be vulnerable. And like you said, all of them have opened up to a certain point where they've had to overcome difficulties or challenges, and
it's just life lessons, like straight up life lessons right there.
Yeah. It's taken me a long time to get to these kind of, I guess, putting it, into the context of like meditation and kind of like overall view of the world, I guess. But I think it's been kind of coming together and clicking a little bit. Maybe because I have been just like completely removed from actual real life, so maybe
take a step back.
Yeah.
We might not have had the exact same challenge, but we've learned the same lesson, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Why wasn't I exposed to this? You know what I mean? The things that would help you or just help us along the way, it's made to look bad, or like you don't even get a taste or get to experience it. You know what I mean? And then you like, I don't know.
That's funny. Well, I guess that's the coolest aspect about this show. It's really revealed to me the dance of life we're all participating in. No one knows at all. But the one thing that it's really restored, because I don't know if restored's the proper word, because it's not like it ever went away, but I guess you could say it's strengthened my humanity and strengthened my compassion, because it's been that refreshing and loving reminder that we have no idea what's going on in someone else's life and experience until we ask and get to talking. And I think that's been one of the coolest things, is to understand how many people have gone through those different trials and tribulations, but we all come with the same and similar takeaways, and I think that's been some of the magic that's been revealed, that hopefully it just, if there's one thing I really, really, really aspire and hope that this show can help people with, is just to give them the reassurance that they're not alone, that you know, you're not alone going through the suffering, the traumas, the pains, that there's been so many people going through this. You know, there's like 8 billion people flying around in this spaceship called Earth, you know, and we're in a cosmic shooting gallery. Like, there's
And I
so
get
much
we're
potential.
each unique as a snowflake, but
Right.
our problems are not.
And that's definitely what it's helped reveal. You know, I've gained my own different personal wisdom nuggets from these shows and experiences chatting with the guest. And I could definitely say that when we started this show to where we're at now, I'm in like a whole few different realms of consciousness from when we started. And I was like, I considered myself pretty up there already, but like there's been so many different breakthroughs and just, you know, real profound recognitions where I think that's what's been able to really help the guest get into that flow. Is I've learned so much more, even just through like us in our conversations in the green room, and then from, you know, the interactions that we have with the guest. I've learned so much more about energy and really creating space. I mean, in terms, you know, at my own like business and stuff, that's helped with my students, but I've been working with that for a while. But like with random people, it's way different than when I've already established a relationship with someone, like a client or a student, you know? So being able to like come in and feel the energy, being able to in real time consciously like dance with it and not try to force it so things don't compress, but things can continue their natural kind of relaxation and expansion. It's been trippy, but it's been super fun.
I just got an insight. Yeah, energy wise, like say, for example, your energy has become more of a force.
Yeah, that's true. Clear the ground.
So energy with purpose may to others feel like a forceful energy, but you know, it's kind of like, you know, energy. Oh, you say, hey, I'm full of energy. Well, all things are full of energy, the kinetic energy, or you know, stored energy. But energy in action can be a forceful energy. Like water can be a force to reckon with. When you have more control over your energy, you have more impact. You know, you're able to direct its energy. So you're able to put a force, an intention behind your energy, and that that's the force behind the energy, is that it's intention driven. And so they're you know, so all your actions coincide with the purpose, and so there's no wasted energy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I want to reveal too many nuggets of what goes on in the green room, but just I think it's always fascinating when, I think for me, it's been how many people vibe with like the whole, like when we do our kind of like energy work before we start, you know, just the simple breaths, visualizations. I'm not going to give away the whole routine for folks, but it's secret. But
and I wouldn't say it's secret as much as it is sacred.
True. Yes, that's actually the best word for it, because it is our process. It's our special moment in that time with the guest where, you know, we do kind of clear the ground and just bring it back. But to see how many people have vibed with it has been really cool for me, where I'm just like, yeah, you're all about that. All right, let's go. But yeah, I think the energy work aspect has been one of those really apparent points of development that I've observed in my own life. And not just because it's opened up different avenues. I mean, again, when you're in that state of just effortless being, you receive so much more information from the universe. And I think that's been one of the more profound things from this show that I've been able to take away outside of the show, you know, in terms of just my own meditation and spiritual work, but also just like living life and being out in public. Like, it's been nothing but love. Like, I've literally just kind of keep that love force field going on, where it's, I mean, even yesterday, like going to U Village, saw a person with a corgi. It was an overweight corgi, so the way it was walking was pretty. It was like, oh, I love it. But and they were definitely kind of more like masked up, kind of like kind of skittish around other people. But when we got to us and the interaction with the dog, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I love your dog, blah blah blah. They were just ear to ear smile. I could even see it through the mask, like eyes getting all tight, cheeks getting all flushed, like, and people were, again, really calm and loving. It's been so cool just to see the different aspects of things of life that changed with everything here.
Yeah, I think you add the calm though. You bring the calm.
But see, that's the thing what you're talking about in terms of the force, where it actually like, and it makes total sense to
calm
me.
is a superpower, by the way.
100%. Well, and just so that to bring some clarity to what you're saying, Rusty, for the listeners, is the aspect of your energy can be a force, you know, and it really is like creating I like to call it as like creating a space. So in meditation, with my students, I often hear, I think now with the clients that I have more than 130 some years worth of like accumulative time being in therapy. And then when they see me, it's just like, I've never had this type of breakthrough. I've never been with this. And it comes right back to that point of the force where I'm creating an energy. And I say that to them. I was like, this is what I'm teaching you to do. This is what we're doing right now is you enter my bubble. When I'm talking with you, I'm not talking to up here. I'm talking to the heart. And that's one of the things that I've been actually able to really practice throughout this show is speaking to the heart, because there's been times in the show where things kind of starting to get a little wonky. They might be getting a little nervous. And I speak to them from here internally and just say like, it's okay, you know, like relax. So that's some secrets, some sacred practices behind the trade. But yeah, really speaking to the individual on that level of the heart, getting them to, I don't want to say like forcibly remove their walls and their boundaries, because it's all about respect in that sense, especially with energy stuff like this. But it's letting them know like it's all love on my end. It's all calm. Like it's okay. It just So
yeah, I wanted to add that one thing I didn't mention is like, because we pre-record our shows, sometimes the costume our guests really open up, and I have to cut some of it out because it's too private, you know. And so and I respect their boundaries as well. You know, the fact that they opened up and they share, you know, maybe a personal situation they went through or whatever, and they relate to it, you know, and it doesn't distract from the rest of the convo. But still, there might be something there that just doesn't need to be shared with public. I respect that, you know, the fact that they opened up, you know, and so there's a lot that ends up outside of the show that, you know, when you're saying, hey, in the green room, what it really means is that there's a lot of private convos that go on sometimes that aren't released because of the sensitive nature.
Yeah, and that right there actually adds even more weight to the vulnerable aspect because to hear some of those things from people has been very, I mean, obviously like jaw dropping on my end, being like, oh wow, like this is going deep. But then just to bring it right back with them with some things like that, I've just been able to, you know, I feel like every person that we've interviewed, I'm friends with. You're always welcome to the barbecues. I got you. We can chop shop forever. Because I think that's the thing of like when you cross that line of intimacy and vulnerability, you enter a deeper understanding of people on that level of the heart.
Yeah, there's a bond that occurs.
Yeah,
it almost feels like a lifelong bond, like having survived a shipwreck together or somehow, that they're
right.
Like we went through some sort of transition together that will always like stand out. Like I get that though, right? Yeah. Like everybody I look back at, I smile like they've been on the show because there's like a real pleasant memory or something. And I know if I call them right now, we could go out and get coffee and just pick up where we left off.
Right. And I think that's something that's really fascinating. And that's also one of the reasons why it's been kind of like a restoration and deeper understanding of just like the human nature that's uniting everyone and, you know, and strengthens our humanity, is because if there's one thing I've learned with all the guests, it's really showed me that we're so much more similar in ways we don't even comprehend than any type of differences. You know, I dare to say that there are 100% like no differences between any of us. We just express things in varying ways. But in terms of difference, there's no such distinction the way I see it anymore. And that's been one of the coolest things to, again, experience and just practice even more, because I think that adds to the kind of like walking around with that aura or sphere of love. Is through everything I've ever had about with this show, it's just like, no, I don't assume shit about anybody or anything. Like I just go into everything with just like that, not rose-colored lenses, because, you know, I'm not naive in that sense, but it's just projecting, being a star of love, of just knowing that we are all of the one human race, that we are all conscious beings experiencing life. And there will always be more bridges, infinite number of bridges that unite us than can divide us. And I think that's one of the really more important things, which is why I'm happy. It's so it's coincidental that, our year anniversary happens to be this week when there's so much going on right now in the world that can be dividing everyone still. That it's just I just want to really proclaim to everyone listening that we're so similar, we don't even realize it. We take it for granted. That's how easy it is to overlook. That it just goes right over our head.
Yeah, you're a star belly sneetch, and I'm a 2-star belly sneetch.
Right?
We shouldn't associate each other with each other. It gets to a point where it gets ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And
100%.
the fact that both you and I recognize that, and then we're able to bring that to our show, that our guests feel comfortable. Like there is nothing really dividing us. The only thing is our experiences. That's it. Your experience of life, my experience of life, and that's really what we're sharing. What was your experience like, and what have you overcome, and and the fact that also when our guests are sharing, I've not picked up on any pretension or hey, look at me, look what I can do, and what I'm saying, like there's always been some sort of humbling experience that's brought them to a point where they are grateful for every breath. And that's the one common denominator I've seen with all our guests, is that they all have that I would say deep-seated gratitude for life.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, it gives me inspiration to take those next steps, whatever they are. When I'm saying, oh, I don't know what I'm doing and I'll look stupid, it's just that what gets me to take that next step is that, this is all energy. This is about, how does this feel? Is this something that you want? Is this something that would be great for someone else to experience?
That deeply rooted gratitude for life has been a reassuring reminder, that human beings are so strong. Like, we're all capable of handling whatever life presents us. And whether we do that gracefully in the moment or, kind of digest and process the lessons and, turn that into wisdom later on.
Because I think we forget that part. It's when we're reminded that we have and that's really what our show is about, is about reminding each other that we have the innate ability to overcome anything when we throw our creative mind to it.
And also in that sense of how much we can problem solve when there's 2 creative, 3 creative minds talking about something, like how deep we can take things to another level and continue to kind of add and tinker and tweak things to just keep building it. And this snowball effect, they're just like, oh, wow, this is a small point that just expanded into a huge powerhouse of conception of an idea, of potential. And I think that's one of the coolest things, again, where it's like, man, you're going to hear me say it a lot. There's been just an infinite amount of cool things that have happened this year. It's hard to put into words or even time, just how many takeaways I've had from each guest, every show. Because again, I live life each moment at a time, really trying to learn and process and digest and apply as much as I can with each moment, day, year.
And then they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm gonna show you that respect because I learned, like you were saying, you take those things and you adapt it to your lifestyle. So yeah.
Love it. I think it was after our first 2 months of shows where I was noticing profound, it's like those synchronicities, those, coincidental moments in life where I was just like, wow, I know how to handle this situation because I just heard someone experiencing how they handled it. I've been able to apply their lessons and real time apply it into my own life and my own experience, my own way.
Wow, I gotta look into that. I'm looking into that. That might be the game changer.
And this is why I like talking with creatives, because it's there's so much different opportunities that you could do to really change people's lives, and it just comes with everyone's sharing their perspective on things and how they got out. Obviously, in the moment, you don't know, when you're in the flow, you don't always remember some of the things that you've said, but when you re-listen to it, you're just like, oh wow, that was some good one.
I gotta say, that really is the test. If you were in the flow, is that you're so in the moment that you don't have any recollection of what it is you said because you didn't put any thought behind it. You weren't preparing to say it. So by the time the combo's over, you go, I don't remember what, I remember what we talked about, but I don't remember what came out of my mouth.
No specifics.
It's almost like it's coming out of my mouth and I'm observing myself as I speak. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to say next.
Yes. And it's like, that's why I like to always akin it to just kind of kicking back and watching a movie, because I've been living in that for quite some time. And it's just been getting to such a cool level where one of the bigger lessons I didn't realize that I guess I also took for granted was just listening and hearing. I've heard so many people throughout this experience of a show, like, and again, like, thank you to the guests, like, I appreciate it, but just like thanking me for listening to them. And for me, it's nothing different that I would do for anyone. Like, when you speak, I'm going to listen, I'm going to hear you. But just to hear how much that simply listening and hearing someone talk and express themselves and just isn't heard in regular day stuff. It used to make me a little sad, but now I see it more so as, well, I'm happy that they have a space now where in a person where they feel like they can actually talk with. But like, again,
I think that part is important, and that's something we don't take into consideration very often. Like just giving someone a space to speak.
Yeah.
Just a judgment-free zone of, like, I think the speaker doesn't even realize how much they needed that sometimes.
Right.
Just to be able to speak uninterrupted, not have to defend myself.
Right. And that to see the gratitude from that has been wild to me, because I'm just like, wow, like,
I'm really enjoying this.
Well,
you know why? Because you guys are real. You're not fake. I've been interviewed by so many people who are just fake and just edit their content, throw it up online, and I never hear from them. Like, I have never heard from them ever again. And their interviews just aren't genuine. Like, you guys are awesome. So yeah, I'm enjoying this.
There's so many lessons that I could take away from it. Again, the one that really speaks to my heart, especially in this moment, is just having a space where people can be their most genuine self, and being able to provide that for the guests, being able to provide that for the audience. And I'm sure one thing that's been really apparent this past year of everything going on is a lot of people's paradigms have changed and shattered and broken. They're no longer entertained by the things they used to be entertained by. They're no longer interested in a lot of these different things that don't speak to their heart. And there's been a lot more awareness to the personal yearnings and aspirations of what really fulfills the human spirit. And I feel like we're creating culture with this show. Like, we're adding to society, because it's not just this scripted typecast A to B. It's not some, like, who can vomit and regurgitate out the most facts and information. We're not,
and it's not about drama.
Right there. Not about drama.
Well, it also goes back to the individual too. It's like, do you want to accept that challenge, or do you just want to cower, tuck your tail, and run? In this day and age, a lot of individuals, they don't want to accept the challenge. They don't want to step up to it, and it's sad, because those challenges are going to make you a stronger individual and mold you into the person you're supposed to be.
It's been cool to really experience that aspect of just being able to know that we're putting something out there that's contributing to culture.
Yeah, the only time we're raising our voice is when we're laughing.
Right. Because even then, like, there's been disagreements and different perspectives that, we don't see eye to eye with on the show, I feel like.
Yeah, I've heard you do this every once in a while, and you do it so politely. You laugh and you go, I think I have some pushback on that, and then they'll go, oh yeah, shoot. Like, everyone's been like, okay. And so even the pushback isn't really confrontational. I mean, you are in essence, it's stating, So there is, in essence, a confrontation, but it's non-combative and it's not making them wrong. And, and so there's no ego involved. You're just saying, I have a slightly different experience than that, and so that's been the most, I would have to say,
from the sidelines, just like
from the sidelines, I go, wow, that's a social skill that isn't really taught in schools about how to interrupt politely. We welcome the feedback. Most creatives correct me if I'm wrong, or it's not necessarily about, okay, I'm wrong and you're right, but hey, if you have another perspective to add to this, most creatives they want to explore their options.
Right. Then I think that's been a cool thing to witness as well, because when you say that, then like a lot of different memories flood back. But it comes back to that point where there's so many profound lessons that have been shared and gained from this show. And I just want to highlight one of them of just being, we grow through conflict, but it doesn't mean it needs to be combative or drama filled or chaotic. It can be loving. It can be inquisitively driven. It can be compassionately driven. And that's one of the things that you touched on in terms of like, I got a little pushback for that, where it's just, it comes back to the point where, right, but it's that loving space. It's like, listen, like we're just conversing, like we are trying to problem solve some of these things. We are trying to be like, well, what do you think of this? It's not, again, I like how you said it, it's not a wrong or right. It's never been the case in this show. And I find that a lot of people that I've experienced, personally in my own life have, reached out to me because of this show, being like, hey man, I really like what you're doing. This is really cool. Or just like, oh, I love that. Let's like that. I really like that episode, because their paradigm of their understanding of me shattered through that show. You know what I mean? Like,
their experience of you changed.
Oh yeah, like I think that's one of the most wild things, where it's also been a double-edged sword, because some people have been deterred to even want to watch the show because of like some middle school experience they had with me like a decade plus ago, where those who have really opened up and, I guess you would say, overcome their own resistance to a certain episode or a show have guaranteed, and I know one of them, at least a few people for a fact, have gained experiences and understandings that help them heal, that help their own aspect of like what they were going through in the present moment. So
that's the unexpected takeaway. I didn't think about that aspect when we were first creating show. Oh, this will heal people. Like that's not something I even, I'm talking, I want to educate, inspire, offer insights. That was what I was going for, but the healing just became this added benefit of, wow, like I get that. I've experienced a lot of healing from the show as well. So I'm speaking from experience. That's an unexpected takeaway.
Right. And that's the power, I think, that's also kind of restored the faith in humanity, that we all are such powerhouses, as those in the FSP meditation satsang side. You hear me say this quite a bit, but I really do see each being as a god and goddess of manifestation and creation. And that's what happens when we are conversing through love and understanding, that it just is a radiating aura, an energy field of upliftment, of recognition, of renewal, of restoration, of there's so many different adjectives you could call it, but it's just,
well, it's whatever you need,
right?
You hear a truth and you go, oh yeah, you feel it, like, oh wow, that just struck a nerve, or and so the healing occurs, whether sometimes involuntarily, like, oh wow, like I don't even know that I just healed from that, and then later on it's just like, oh wow, I feel so much better now, oh, I really do feel calm.
It's more than just celebrating. Sometimes I think celebrating your acknowledgement and everything, or sometimes I think it's more than just celebrate what you've accomplished, but really just acknowledging it.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, it comes back to the point of the whole show, where it's just, we have no idea what we're talking about when we start. Like, we can say that we have some points, we have some questions through the works that have, that each guest has and things like that. But in terms of how we get to those points, there's no path. It's whatever the moment takes us to. And that's been, again, some of the cooler experiences, just to understand that we all have the potential to tap in whenever.
And so I think this is a good time to extend an invitation to our family, to our community. If you'd like to be on a future episode of Creatives Chat, go to our website, creativeschat.com, and fill out the contact form, or drop us a message via Facebook on our Facebook page. There's plenty of ways to reach us. I would just say, if you're feeling compelled, if you feel an urge, don't
jump into the arena. No, yeah.
If you're being called into action, we're not going to judge. Like people have showed up for our show, that a couple of people that we didn't really know beforehand either, that we just met at the show. Like, and have, like you said, after the show, bonded for life.
See him in the street like, oh, hey, what's going on? Come here.
So I'm just going to say to anybody who's listening right now, then if you feel moved by the Spirit, then drop us a line. Peter and I will we'll have a short interview. We'll invite you in, and we'll take it from there. We'll hit record and we'll go.
100%. And it comes back to that concept of one of the things that this show captures that I've found has been really textbook definition of just magical is you get to see people in their genuine nature of their truth. And when they speak from the heart, it hits differently. When they open up and talk about like their visions for the future, when they talk about their creative process, how they've overcome a certain obstacle, it really does heal your own wounds of the heart. And that's just been so fascinating. I can't express it enough, man. Like, there's been such a awesome experience of just being here listening to it. And as the kind of like host to the show, it's hard to even say host because it's a dance. It takes two to tango. And what you were saying earlier about like the willingness of the other party and the guests that we have to really get in the flow themselves, like I always just say, a huge shout out and thank you to all the guests that we've had on, because you've made the show just as special as we've been talking about it from our perspectives. Without you guys,
we'd have no show.
Yeah, exactly. We'd have no show. It'd just be us chatting the whole time. But like,
we'd have, it wouldn't be the same show.
Yeah, it would be the same. We'd still get deep, but it's offered such a wide scope of experience that it wouldn't be the same. It's really truly shown people, whatever your color, shape, creed is, that you're capable of great things. You just gotta dance your dance. I hope it's made people be more authentic to themselves. I guess that's a good way to sum that up.
Yeah, I think a really important thing that, like, because even though I feel like I am in that rut, what I'm learning is, if I ever am at this point again, how to handle it.
We can learn from one another.
Yeah, because that's the one thing I did want to add about our timeless chats, our timelessness, is that when we're in that mode of timelessness, it's almost as if our chats become timeless.
Right? Ooh, I like that. Yeah, I feel that.
So when you're listening to a show we shot last year, it still pertains, like this, like the lessons are still relevant no matter, and so that's what another takeaway that I had, unexpected takeaway, is that
so true.
These are timeless shows, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, timelessness creates timeless experiences.
Yeah, I would say timelessness transcends. I mean, it transcends experience. Well, let me just put it this way. My experience is that the intent of this experiment, the human experiment, is for the spirit to transcend the human condition. That we are spiritual beings in a physical body, and that we become embodied spiritual beings. That's my goal anyway. And so what happens is I attract other people that are on that same and similar path, and so our commonality is that we are transcending the human condition through this, through spiritual methods. And so it's not something you learn in a book. It's not something you go to a school and you get a diploma for. It's something, it's boots on the ground, grab a shovel, grab a hammer, you're getting to work, and you're working on yourself. You're not working on somebody else. You're not trying to fix somebody else. And that's usually the problem, is that we learn something, then we think we know something more than somebody else. So we become an expert in that area, and then we stop learning in other areas because
then you're compartmentalized, and then you're just staying in your lane, and that's the fall of mankind.
Right. I think we're like-minded. This is where I want to insert my new graphic. Real recognizes real.
Facts.
And we both allow the spirit. I mean, that's the intention-driven portion of it, is that we create a space for spirit to appear and so when we say to transcend the human condition through spiritual means, it means that we're open to that. Like, there's nothing more that we could physically learn, do, or attempt, that the spirit hasn't already overcome.
That's a good way to put it, and I like that. Because it brings us back to like how the whole show even originated. It's just like, I had the feelings that like you had the new content that you wanted to create, you had the idea for the show, and at that same time, like maybe like a week prior, I had that same intuition of being like, man, I really want to create a spiritual based show. But I already knew in like my gut that having a show based on like spirituality like wasn't going to catch, it wasn't going to draw a lot of eyes and attention to it. And the fact that when we connected and how the show just has naturally progressed, it's become a very deep show. It's a very low key, just like spiritual based, like it is really like a very spiritual focused, spiritual centric show, not along those lines of spirituality though. It's been through that creative expression I think that's almost like the hook, line, and sinker for people. It has been like I don't want to say like Jedi mind trick, because I don't want to be like deceptive or anything like that, but it's been a very
it's not a bait and switch
show. It's a palatable way to explore the self and explore the universe.
I would say it's more authentic than any other show, because truly, when you're going to tap into the creative mind, it's nothing but spirit. Like,
facts.
I often interchange that and say, "Oh, creative minds, creative spirit." But to me, the creative mind is the creative spirit. It's almost synonymous.
Right, and spirit is creative. The other thing, when I was at the park recently and saw the sign, it said something recreate. I don't remember what it said, but I saw, it was, and then I'm like, recreate. Like it was this whole, like, to play, you are recreating. Like it was this, like, oh, there's such a play on those words I could work with on even like a coaching process with the whole, recreate and recreate. It was.
Oh, I love it.
And so that's where we get into semantics about the mind, and people think the mind is the brain, but the brain is just is a
organic CPU.
Let's say a processing unit. That's a very, CPU is a very good way of putting it. It's exactly what it is. It's processing, but it's not the mind, and we just think that the brain is the mind, and the mind, you can't quantify the mind. Show me your mind, Peter. Show it to me. I want to see it. Show everybody your mind right now. Can we please put your mind on display, bring it out in the open so we can take a look at it?
And see right
I'd like
there.
to examine your mind, please.
That's the magic sauce, because we can only express. We can only create.
Right. And so the mind is the spirit. Right. It's the unseen.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you want to inflict change, you got to go with the grain until you have enough power and influence to go against it and change things.
Because I was wanting to have the creative convos where I love these convos I have with other creatives where we just kind of just lose track of our judgments that just kind of fall aside. And so, that's really what's happening, is that we're dropping any assumptions of how we think this conversation is going to turn out. We're just going to let it just happen, right? It's kind of like being in a car and letting go of the wheel and just, let's see where this car takes us. I mean, it's nuts.
Well,
right? But that creatives do that all the time, knowing spirit's in control and it'll be guided and we'll land safely exactly to the destination where we need to be. That we can just let go. And it doesn't mean we're relinquishing control. It just means that we're relinquishing control of the method in which we reach our outcome.
Here, I think one of the coolest components to the timelessness aspect is that it is a radiating energy from you. It's why you can go like, oh my gosh, we just went 3 hours. I haven't gone to the bathroom. I didn't even get a drink. I didn't go eat anything. You know, we've been going on all cylinders because we're in the process of creation. It's just like any activity when we're kids or when we're having fun or playing or just doing our own building or whatever it is we do for our outlet of expression. But it's the energies both kind of mixing and forming into this, again, just newfound ideas getting formed, newfound perspectives getting painted and processed through speech. Something that will uplift society, not just drag people down in some old
yeah, you just explained the nuts and bolts of what our show is about. That's the nuts and bolts. Like if you were to deconstruct our show, that is what it consists of. And then when you watch the show, it's a completely, wow, the experience just transcends that. Like, oh, wow. But when you describe that, what you get out of it in return is just so much greater.
Yeah, the two of you do really well together, I think. Because like Peter doesn't have to think about a bunch of stuff that you're making happen, mind you.
Exactly.
He just sits there being adorable.
And you can't coach that. I mean, that's just a natural gift.
Yeah.
And we often have a 3-hour chat. And we think to ourselves, it's not like, hey, we're going to go have a 3-hour chat. It just turns into a 3-hour chat.
And see, that's important, though, to make that distinction, because we tell each guest before we start, like, hey, you know, we're happy that you blocked out at least like this hours. Just as a full disclaimer, sometimes we may go a little long. So if you have a time stop, that's where Rusty comes in, folks, because he'll keep track of the time. Yeah, he'll keep track of the time for us, so me and the guests can get into that timelessness state. But it's a full-on disclaimer, like, hey, like this could go like 2, 3, 4 hours, you know. So having,
and the reason why it does is because we're having so much fun. We can't leave that part out. We lose track of time because we're having so much fun.
Oh, that was so much fun. I love that. That was great.
Because again, like you don't really get to that timeless state and that flow and that depth of conversation with many people. Usually it takes like a good friend. It takes like a, oh, we went through a tour together, you know, like we're not war buddies, you know, we're just, most of the time for a lot of these guests, like we just met them once. I've gone to school with them and haven't talked with them in years, you know, like we crossed paths a long time ago.
A friend of a friend said, hey, they should be on your show.
Exactly. And it turns into this camaraderie of experience where we tap into the spirits and hearts of other people, you know, and that's been so refreshing again, because it's really, you know, I bring it back to that humanity and compassion aspect. It just showed how similar we are. And that you can befriend anyone, and that you can achieve that deep state of knowing with anyone whenever. It just requires you to listen, requires you to be open. And again, that's also a really good distinction to make, that we don't have a goal of X amount of time. We just go with whatever needs to be said. Let's have it be heard. And then sometimes
with that, we come to the conclusion of another hour.
I love it.
Flew by because we're having so much fun. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for another edition of Creatives Chat.
Ooh, yearly special.
Yes, and subscribe to our show to get notified of future episodes.
Facts.
All that stuff. Become a part of our group page.
Share the videos.
Yes, we love our community and we love you, and thank you for supporting it. Everybody, have a happy always.
Roll the outro.
That's what I was waiting for.
That concludes this episode of Creatives Chat. Thank you for watching. Join us every Thursday at 3:33 p.m. Pacific Daily Time as creative minds get together and chat about who knows what. View more episodes on our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks again to our sponsors for making this show possible. Thank you, We Are Historically, for your conscious human apparel. Shop online at wearehistorically.com.
Hi, I'm Darrius Willrich. I'll teach you everything you need to know about playing jazz piano like a pro with my 12-week online video course and downloadable guidebook, Jazz Piano Pro Essentials. Enroll today at jazzpianopro.com.
Thank you for joining us.
Get another like big
Peter,
chat.
you're absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much.
Yo, real recognizes real. It's a mutual thing.
Oh, you're good. I love that. Real recognizes real.
Oh, it's the only way. You guys take care. Have a good chat.
Thank you, Peter. I got to say, it was definitely a super cool episode. This one rocked. Thank you.